So I'd like to also extend my thanks to techUK for today's session. A brilliant setup of speakers today. It was fabulous last year. I really enjoyed it. And I'm also extra thankful to be put in the warm-up support act slot again. Thank you, Matt. I do not want to follow anybody today. Innovation and technology is a fascinating subject matter. I could have talked about a number of things, but as a bit of a spoiler alert, I'm not going to talk about AI, large language models, generative, none of that. We'll leave that for the rest of the session today. Instead, what I'm going to talk about are the key questions when I think about innovation. And then I'll give you my own insight to what I think is the most important thing. Spoiler alert number 2, it's probably on the title of the slides. So, key questions. When I think about the first key question, it's the most fundamental one. Is innovation important? Like, should we even be talking about it? I read a number of studies when I was preparing for today's speech. We've done a lot at KPMG. I'm sure all the other suppliers in rooms have got their studies. Public and private sector analysis on what our leaders think about innovation. And the overwhelming majority of leaders think that innovation is critical to sustained success. So we need to innovate. This is from the leaders of the public sector and private sector. To amplify that, I like stats. And 30 years ago, when I was at school, there were only 24% of the companies that made up the top 100 countries of the UK that are still in existence. That's like an interesting thing to know. The average lifespan of a company in the FTSE 100 is 15 years. And you can pretty much pinpoint those organizations that manage to carry on, and they are the ones that are full of innovation. They are the ones that change and adapt. You can always call out market pressures, etc. But if you're sustainable, you innovate, you can change, and you can flow with whatever the world hits you with. It's not just, though, the private sector that needs to innovate. There's a fantastic report by the World Economic Forum that talks about public sector innovation and how impactful and important that is in the private sector, and indeed to the economy in totality. And it's like 10,000 pages long. Read it. It took me quite a while. The key thing is that public and private sector innovation are absolutely, completely lockstep into driving economic growth within the country. And you can see that with the last Chancellor's speech on the amount of money that's been put into innovation. One example there is £1 billion into supercompute and AI. There are lots of other initiatives that are being done, so the government is really behind driving this, putting investment in, levelling up the country. And DCIT, I don't know if I've got anyone from there today, I was reading their 6 top priorities for 2023. And sitting proudly in there is around putting our public services at the forefront of innovation. So, we're answering the question, is innovation important? I think the answer is probably yes. Now, are we any good at it? That's the next question to ask. The same studies I referenced on the previous slide about how important we think innovation is, you then read how successful our leaders think we are at it. And that's not such a good story. So only 5 to 10% of leaders are satisfied with their innovation performance. That means the overwhelming majority are not super happy with how much we deliver. 90 and 95% of all innovations that make it to the market, this is not fail fast, this is out in the market, don't succeed to the level they want them to. So there's stuff to be done. Our diffuse innovation within our society, within the UK, is lagging a little bit behind the G8. What that means is from ideas to adoption. That's the diffuse curve of innovation. So we have lots of ideas, but they don't always land and propagate through into working life. We're a little bit behind. So that all sounds a bit gloomy, but don't worry. The public sector, and everyone in this room will have great examples. There are many, many, many ideas of innovation, things we've seen, transformation, brilliant stuff. I read social policy at the University of Leeds, and in there, they've got a copy of the Beveridge Report, which I read when I was studying my undergraduate degree. That is an unbelievable piece of innovation. Written in 1942, we're going to transform the welfare state. I also have the benefit, as Matt said, of working in digital transformation, and the work that I see now that we do in KPMG with our partners in the public sector, full of innovation, from auto-allocation of beds based on AI to robotic deliveries of food to vulnerable citizens, etc., etc., etc. We have a rich history of innovation, but I think it's fair to say there's more can be done, and we can get better at it. So what's stopping us getting better? My friends at Gartner have done a large study of hundreds and thousands of public sector and private sector leaders from around the world to say, Why aren't we better at innovation? We have one in KPMG, we have like 9 things, Gartner have 15 things, I'm sure you've all got your things, 7, 3, 12, whatever it is. What's really interesting to me on here is that if you look at all of the reasons, none of them are surprising. We should have less silos. Okay, that sounds good. We should allocate money. I agree. We should make governance more streamlined. I also am in accord with that. These aren't super complicated things to work out. So, is innovation important? Yes. It's not just important, I believe it's mandatory. Are we any good at it? We have pockets of excellence, for sure. But there is definitely more to be done. And what is stopping us getting better? Well, we have all the lessons learned. And as I said before, my second spoiler was I firmly believe that creating a culture of innovation where innovation is your culture is absolutely key. That is the fundamental thing that we need to get right. It's not something that gets done on the side. It's not a pet project that somebody sponsors or runs. It's not just running after the new technology that's been delivered. Although do run after that, because that's my job. Now, to explain a little bit more about what I think innovation culture is, I'll briefly delve into the world of theoretical physics, which I'm sure you're all desperate for me to get into today. And for any one of my friends in the audience who've probably heard this story before, I love physics. Physics is a great way of explaining how everything works. In Stephen Hawking's book, A Brief History of Time, he has several thought experiments in there. One of my favorite thought experiments is that if I bounce the ball and I caught it, that ball lands in exactly the same position of which I left my hand. I bounce it, catch it, same position, there it is. However, if I'm on the International Space Station watching someone else bounce a ball back in the hand, it takes about a second to land on the floor and back in again. In the time that it's taken for the ball to land back in my hand, the Earth has rotated about 18 miles. So that ball has not landed back in the same space. It has landed 18 miles away. If I view from outside the solar system, it lands in a different place, and it lands in a different place. This is the theory that there is no such thing as absolute space. It's part of Einstein's theory of special relativity. We can talk about that a lot more later on. The point is, there is no absolute space. And when I think about innovation, I have exactly the same thought process. There is no absolute culture within innovation. It depends on who you are and your relative nature of that organization. The reason why I chose the examples earlier on about the Beveridge report on auto-allocation of hospital beds is that Lord Beveridge, when he wrote the report, was in the position, the relative position, to enable that piece of innovation. Somebody works in a hospital whose job it is to make sure that ill patients get a bed. That's their level of influence, that's their level of relative culture. The important thing is making sure that everyone within your organization, within our organization, within the UK, thinks about innovation within their sphere of influence, thinks about the relative nature of what they can do in innovation. It should not be the vanguard of people in jeans and trainers talking about tech. It should be the vanguard of everybody. We should all work towards being the most innovative country we can be to make it successful as we possibly can be. And with that, I will hand over to the Right Honourable Jeremy Quinn, Minister, for the next speech. Thank you very much.